takes a second to get this going. All right. So this is really fun, and this is the first time we've tried this model streaming into our alumni groups, but really excited that we can do this. I guess for anyone that might have the privilege of not knowing who I am, I'm John Kilkenny. I'm the director of the music festival at Sewanee Music Festival. We're here with some really special guests, Frank and Marion Schaefer, who are longtime members of our faculty, members of our community. Marion is a harpist with the Memphis Symphony. Frank's timpanist with the same orchestra. But they're here today with us as part of our alumni reunion that we're so happy to be able to have. And I couldn't possibly do an alumni reunion without the two of you, and of course, having some of our faculty that we're also alumni. So Josh Bynum is here with us as well, and I think we might have some other people dropping in. For those of you watching in the Facebook groups, if you have a question or a comment, or you want to ask anything, or hey, do you remember this or that, just go ahead and put that in the comment section of the group, and make sure you use your name or let us know who you are, because that won't come up on the screen here. So anyway, hi everybody. Frank, Marion, how you guys doing?
We're just fine.
All the same.
Yeah.
So crazy after all. Yeah, we missed in the orchestra, and we miss Swanee so much.
Yeah.
You know,
We were really missing coming to Sewanee this summer. It was really kind of a blow, but nothing else you can do right now.
How did your season end? I mean, I know for all of us it was kind of interrupted, but things are going well. You guys are okay, and your family's good, and all of that, I hope. Yeah,
Everything's fine. We're not hurting so far.
Yeah, good. And Josh, you've been teaching for us in our virtual program. If those of people can see the background here, I tried to get Gary background here. Yeah, so you've been doing some teaching for us this summer, right? Yeah. So how's that going?
Yeah, it's going really good. In fact, this is interesting. Good timing for this session, because at the end of the master class yesterday, one of the questions was, had we been there in person, what would it have been like? And I was kind of going through that and having some of the students who have been there in person talk about that experience. And then I shared with them how it was different from when I was a student there, so most notably two orchestra rehearsals every day versus just one orchestra rehearsal every day, and the chops of steel that you get from that experience.
So I'm going to bring Jessica in here real quick, one of our faculty and also our alums, and have her say hi. Hi, Jessica. How are you?
Hi. Frank. Oh my goodness, so good.
It's great to see you.
It's been a long time, Jessica.
Uh-oh, we're having a little technical, maybe a little. Oh, there you go. Say all that again, Jessica. You're happy to see everybody, right?
Hello. Hi. Hi, Mary and Frank. How are you?
We're
Did
fine.
you see our picture John put online? I couldn't find it again. Did you see the picture of us?
I did. So, Marion, you have some explaining to do in one of the photos. It's you in a nun's costume. So we're going to need to get to that.
Yes.
It was the toga party. Remember that?
Oh, I do remember all the toga parties. The toga parties were at Cannon. We're at the college men's dorm. And every Friday night, because we had made it through another week, and it was time to celebrate. That particular toga party, I remember Ken Keisler had something to do with.
Yes. And I, of course, at the time, I had no idea what toga party was. And it's to me, it was just a party. So I just showed up in my normal clothes. And you all wrapped around. There's some kids were with their sheets and stuff. It was wild.
That's right. It was.
It was awesome, though.
I want to hear about all of this, but I want to just let you all know we're getting some comments here just from folks that are watching. Eddie Lee, Merritt is watching from Hawaii, and Annie Dunn. Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Schaefer, and parents. I'm not sure. I'm sure I'm not the only one. What a treat to see everybody. Kara Lewis played flute 1989 and 1991. Really happy to be reconnecting. So this is great to see that we have folks watching. We have folks commenting. So. One of the sort of missions, I don't know, Oh, Tracy Ward, Tracy Dottie Ward here is in Knoxville. Hello, Tracy. Nice to see you.
Jody.
Great to see you, Tracy. Hear you, Tracy.
One of the things that has been important to me since coming into the position as director of SSMF is to reconnect with our alumni. And I'm just going to tell a very quick story, and then I'm going to be quiet. And I really want to hear from Frank and Marion about some of this. But everywhere I go in the last couple of years, to conferences or orchestras or recruiting or something like that, I'll tell somebody, oh, I'm with the Sewanee Music Festival, I'm director of the festival, and their eyes light up, and they see this emotion come over them, and they're like, oh, I was there, and I loved it, and I was there when I was 15, or I was there when I was 13, and you get this moment of just awe in their face, and so there's clearly something special about Sewanee and special about the mountain. And for both of you, for Marion and for Frank, can you just talk a little bit about that and your time early there, and how all of that's connected?
Well, we got started at Swanee the day we got married. Herbeck, who was the cellist on the faculty, recommended me to Martha because Bill Wiggins, who was the timpanist in Nashville at that time, had resigned. And so we arranged on that date and got started. And all know that you probably never seen me without a beard. I think I was the first person to be on the faculty that had a beard, and Martha McCrory had a little taken back on that, because in those days there was a thing required in the Sewanee rules that college gentlemen could wear mustaches, but that was all facial hair that was permitted.
But she took a shine to Frank,
But
and it
she
was
did.
okay.
Yeah, it was. But we had a wonderful time there that first summer, and we just literally loved the place. To be quite honest with you, the money didn't matter. We just thought it was the greatest place to be. We learned not only from teaching the students, but also the repertoire. We actually learned some new repertoire there in the festival orchestra, and of course with the wonderful chamber music program that was going on.
This was 1979, our first summer there. And the faculty in those days, it was a 5-week camp, and the faculty earned $500 each for those 5 weeks. And actually, we were thrilled to have $500. I think we would have paid another $500 to be sure we could come back again. Because the experience with the students and the music was so incredible. Everyone just loved it so much. And still, everyone's the same.
Yeah, the magic of Sewanee is still there. Thank goodness that over the years, it's not been tarnished that much. And John, you certainly have brought the magic back in a wonderful way that we've all really appreciated. But we really enjoyed the early years very much. This T-shirt that I have on is called the Order of the Silver Bone.
Yeah, you need to help explain that one, because I didn't know that one here, and I've got having fun with my banners here, Frank. So hang on a second. There you go. All right, this is very fun for me. I'm learning all these new technology.
In those days, the dining hall stuff was very different than it is today. Gaylor Hall, who most of you may remember is an academic building primarily now, was the dining hall on campus, and it was kind of an awful place in many ways because there was no air conditioning. It always seemed that it was not in the best state of cleanliness. And one of the big things that happened was there were dogs lying around all along the outside of Gaylor, mainly because there was not a leash law in Sewanee in those days. And I finally complained to a faculty member one day, just coming online, says, "What are all these dogs doing around?" He said, "Oh, they're," and he was being tongue in cheek with me and saying, "Oh, they're members of the Order of the Silver Bone." And I said, "What?" And so I found this in the Lemon Fair shop a couple of years later and just bought it and had fun with it. But they were great years, and we had a really good time. The schedule, of course, in those days was very stringent. As Josh and I mentioned a little bit before, there were 2 orchestra rehearsals a day, among other things, and 2 periods of chamber music. I think everything got going about 8:30 in the morning.
But the orchestra rehearsed in different places. Yeah. The Cumberland Orchestra with Bruce was in
convocation,
and it was not air conditioned.
Oh man!
Do you remember Bruce would have fans all around?
He would have fans all over, and he'd be banging that stand with a drumstick. Yeah, it is awesome.
Towel around his neck.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, towel. Yeah. And also you could I remember my first summer at Sewanee, I was able to get college credit with music theory class. So like somewhere in the day, every day you'd go off and take a theory class, you know, that kind of thing.
Every afternoon there was theory for everybody.
Right after lunch.
And yeah, it was a real thing. There were just several of us did not have to teach
the schedule back then.
Theory. The schedule was there were 2 periods of chamber music every day. Chamber 1, 10:15 to 11. Chamber 2, 11:15 to 12. And I mean, Martha ran a tight ship. We all had places to be, and we had to be prompt. One of the P's.
That's right.
We're going to get to the 6 P's of Sewanee. We're going to once and for all settle what the 6 P's of Sewanee are. Yeah.
The harpists were really lucky to always have the art gallery before you took over with percussion.
Yes, I did take the art gallery. Well, I actually didn't do it. I wasn't there that week when my substitute decided that he needed the art gallery. Anyway. Yeah.
Oh, well, anyway, we were very happy with the air conditioning in the art gallery. Plus, we were close to convocation. We could roll our harps over there easily. But it was great. We found all kinds of things to do over there, and it was just like a good hideout for everybody to be in the air conditioning for a little bit.
Well,
There were lots of observers.
Oh, sorry.
There were lots of observers who came into the art gallery just to get into the AC.
Yeah, I think I became friends with lots of the harp students when I was there, just for a couple of reasons, actually, more than just the air conditioning, but certainly the air conditioning. So I'm trying to go back to Gaylor for a second. So, and here's Kara Lewis, who's with us, one of our alums, and she's reminding me that there was always peanut butter in Gaylor, and that I'm seeing lots of comments about the food, right? I guess the food is a trigger for a lot of folks, but Jessica, I'm curious, like your experience, especially because you've told me your story before about Sewanee, but you came directly from China to study in Sewanee, right? You had not been in the U.S. before that. So
no, actually,
yeah.
So I came right after, like 6 months after Tiananmen Square, which was 1989 December. I arrived in U.S. December 16, 1989. And that was 6 months after Tiananmen Square. So University of Miami had offered me full scholarship. I believe I was the first undergrad Chinese student from China in School of Music at University of Miami. And I studied with Tom Moore. I'm sure Mary and Frank remember. I don't know when you were there, Josh, but do you remember Tom Moore?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So he was my professor at UM. And so it was, I think, 1991, the first summer, full summer. I mean, I arrived December of 89, but I was too busy working on my English through that summer, the first summer. So the summer of 1991, Tom said, you must come with me to Sewanee. And I said, I've got no money to pay for the festival. He said, no worry, I'm sure we'll be able to get you full scholarship there. And so I sent my audition tape to Martha, and she immediately said, I want her here. Not only I want her here, I want her to be the concertmaster for the opening concert, and I want her to be concertmaster for the closing concert. And it was back there 5 weeks back then. And those 2 concerts were the most 2 important concerts. So I was like so overwhelmed and flattered and everything. And so I went up to Sewanee, and I actually drove with Tom Moore with a couple of other students from Miami. And he was so generous. He paid for hotel in the middle, because we stopped midway somewhere, and he paid for our hotel. So we were able to drive with him with no additional cost. So those were so that was my first Sewanee experience. I was there. I made so many friends that year. I don't know if you remember, Mary and Frank, that there were a whole bunch of girls from Taiwan that year.
Yes, I had two.
1991, and I think you had a couple of harp students
I had
too.
two. Yes, I certainly did.
Yeah, they were so nice, whole nice bunch of Taiwanese girl, and they were there. We made good friends, and then I met a whole bunch of other friends, and it's just amazing. And the whole summer flew by like a dream. I mean, I won the concerto competition, played Saint-Saëns, Introduction, and Capriccioso. And Tony Tikai was there with me that year, and he also, remember the cellist?
Yes.
Yeah, so Tony was there, and he was the principal cello, and I was the concertmaster for the orchestra, the Swanee Symphony, and he also won concerto competition, I believe, that year. So it was fun. I mean, Swanee always felt like home to me, and so fast forward to 2003. That was the year I got married, actually. And my wedding was 2 days, I think. Or at that point, it was Swanee still 5 weeks, and I think my wedding was like few days after the festival ended. It was such a scramble that I had to remotely trying to get ready for my wedding. And so before that, Tom Moore's like, okay, Jessica, you gotta come back to Swanee, but not as a student. You gotta come to teach. And he said, are you available? So that's how that first time I went back as faculty. But then I've gone back a few more times since then. Not every year consecutively, but I've gone back. Swanee is home to me.
Right.
What I'm hearing from you, Jessica, and I think this is a great point for Marion and Frank to take, and then Josh, I want to get you in to talk about your time at Swanee as well, but the sense of family, and you're talking about Tom Moore and Peter Spurbeck and Michael Gert and all these folks that were there. I mean, there was definitely a sense, and we're going to talk about Bruce Dinkins in his own. Bruce needs his own space to talk about him separate from anybody else because he's Bruce. But you weren't there for the money, and you weren't there for the luxurious accommodations, and we could talk about Martha a little bit and what she was like to work for and work with, but there was still this incredible sense of community and sense of family that lived in the faculty. And if you could just talk just for a second about that, that'd be awesome.
Martha put us in Trezevant dormitory.
Put faculty in Trez? Sorry, I shouldn't interrupt you, but I know what that means, yeah.
We had a horseshoe type area there and no air conditioning and one picnic table in the middle of the grass and between all of us. And that picnic table was the pulse of the faculty.
It was the epicenter of the faculty, yes.
Every night we would go to the picnic table and discuss our day and tell stories. And it
bring some beverages, of course.
Yes. But we were family. We all lived together and shared the same joys, frustrations, and it was just wonderful. And to see, and even the conductors, so many of the conductors would come back every year, and
Bruce stayed at Trezevant for years.
That's right.
Bruce Dinkins did.
Had a
So
special.
we're going to talk about Bruce, and you brought up conductors, and I want to just touch on one who I know was influential in the festival for many years, and a lot of the alumni that are watching this or will watch it will remember and have worked with Ken Keisler, right? So, for me, like, I went to Swanee and I was in high school, and I never, to that point, encountered somebody with the gifts that Ken has, right? I mean, just the caliber of his musicianship and his teaching and all of that. And that experience for me was really transformative. So were the other folks I worked with and studying with you, Frank. I mean, there were so many, like every day was like a week. But that specifically that experience with Ken, and I know Marion and Frank, you interacted with him not just in Swanee, but in your professional world outside of the mountains. So you could just talk a little bit about Ken and his work in Swanee, and I'd appreciate it. Yeah.
Ken was really dedicated to Swanee.
He was
dedicated to the success and of everyone and everything that went on. And he and Martha were very close too. Martha would really listen to Ken. So
he really had a very special relationship with the students. He wasn't necessarily easy on them.
And I'm gathering there weren't a lot of people that Martha would listen to.
But Ken had a way of really helping the students to understand why it was important and why he was pushing them in this way to do this. And I would say most of his, if not all of his performances were really wonderful in that sense.
I think for me, Ken was this energy. I mean, he was so energetic. When he conducts, his eyes just goes like that. So it was like, he kind of, once, his rehearsal is always run like with such incredible amount of, level of energy. I mean, I feel like the guy doesn't get tired at all. I mean, he's been running around all day, and he comes, he runs this incredible lively rehearsal, and yeah, so it was that, to me, that stood out the most, like his incredible level of energy, and he's so insistent of the way he wants it, whatever he hears it, and it's wonderful. It was really engaging. He's so engaging with the students. Yeah.
Josh, I know you worked with Ken too as a student there. What was that like? I mean, he's known, I mean, I don't want to stereotype what he's known for as a musician, but my experiences with him were always really big pieces. Shostakovich 12 and
absolutely,
Rome and Festa Romana. And so as a brass player and as a trombonist, yes. I mean, yeah.
Well, actually, so Sewanee was the first time I've ever played in an orchestra. And my first year was actually David Perkel's first year as the trombone instructor. And I remember getting a call from Martha saying, we want you to be in the festival orchestra for the opening concert, which was An American in Paris. And maybe William Tell Overture. But then that first week was Festa Romana. Funny you should mention that, John. Yeah. And with Ken Keisler conducting, the festival orchestra and opening up the festival. And I was just, on cloud nine. But come to find out, there was a Russian trombonist by the name of Sergei Kamilovskoy, who had auditioned and was coming late. So he clearly would have been in the festival orchestra versus someone who's never played in an orchestra before. And I remember sitting next to Dave Perkel on the Gershwin, and after every entrance, I would look at him and I would say, was that good? And he'd just kind of look at me and be like, yeah, it's good. And then next entrance, and he'd go, I'd say, how was that? He'd be like, it's fine. And after about 4 times, he stopped me and I was like, how was it? He's like, and he stopped, he held his finger. He's like, if there's a problem, I will tell you that there is a problem. And I was like, oh, okay. And then keep in mind, like, I'm still learning tenor clef, and I go to sit at Festa Romana, and there's this huge trombone solo, the drunken Barker, Carnival Barker, and Ken Keisler, is looking right at me. And it was an education, absolutely. But I'll never forget that he was very insistent on excellence. He was also patient, and he knew when to encourage and when to push, not completely undermine a person's confidence. And at the end of the week, I remember the concert actually went really, really well. And he came up to me afterwards, and he was just so complimentary and kind and encouraging to keep going. And that was my very first week at Sewanee, so I'm very, I have very fond memories of Ken Keisler for that.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, me too. I remember the closing concert. We did Mahler 1, the entirety of it for the whole the Swanee Symphony. That's a huge undertaking. I mean, it's a huge piece for the students, but he managed to put it together. We nailed it. It was so much fun. I mean, Mahler 1 is just like, yeah. So.
Well, and we're having a very fun and serious discussion about Ken, and we're going to talk about Bruce. And I know I have to leave plenty of space for us to talk about the official 6 Ps of Sewanee, and a select version, a selected, I'll call it curated. That's what the kids call it now. Curated list of the faculty 6 Ps of Sewanee that Marion has thankfully saved, and we'll get to us in a minute. But before we leave this topic of Ken Keisler and just the conductors. The thing that I remember being there and playing, all this repertoire. Josh, if it wasn't my first time playing in an orchestra, it was maybe my second. Maybe I had like one. I think I had a couple youth orchestra concerts before I came to Swanee. I went to Swanee because I was friends with an oboe player, Kelly Grundy. Now she's married. She plays out in Portland. Wonderful oboe player out there, and we were friends. And she said, "You're coming to Swanee." And I was like, "Oh, okay." All right. And so I had a couple orchestra concerts, and the amount that I didn't know was so profound that I didn't even know what I didn't know. Right? I mean, it was just there was this deep chasm of unawareness that I was living in, and whether it was studying with Frank or playing in Bruce's orchestra or playing in symphony with Ken or the other conductors, the degree of patience that all of these people had to have, all of the faculty and staff had to have at that time, I think is even more than it is now. I mean, I think the festival's a little bit older now in terms of the participants and all of that. I mean, the world has changed in a lot of ways. But boy, I played Medea with the festival orchestra, and I was 16, and I had no right to go anywhere near that piece, or the Planet, or I don't know, gosh, whatever else we played that year. And it was so amazing to get to do that and to feel safe in making mistakes and knowing that, like, as tough as Martha was and as tough as everybody was, if you made a mistake, the world wasn't going to come crashing down around your head, and that for me felt really special.
Oh, the repertoire was outstanding. I mean, Prokofiev 5, Festa Romana, Mahler 2, Mahler 1. I mean, like some heavy stuff, just, and and you definitely always felt like you could certainly lay it all out there, and it's not like you were going to go get fired if something didn't go absolutely perfectly just the first time. So
someone who was the I don't know. I don't even know how to describe him. But the heart of the one of the cornerstones of Swanee was Bruce Dinkins, and all of our alums that are watching this are going to know Bruce and have worked with him. And Marion and Frank, I'd like you to talk about him as a colleague and as from that faculty perspective a little bit and what that was like. And then three of us will, we talk about what it's like as a student. I think the biggest takeaway for me, and I remember saying this to him, and I remember saying it at the services honoring him and to Hildy and to his kids. I only worked with Bruce maybe a dozen times in my life. I mean, I spent a summer with him in Swanee, and then we interacted a handful of times later on professionally in different ways. He would hire me for something, or I ran into him at a conference, but he had a profound influence on my career, and I wouldn't have the job at Swanee, any job at Swanee, if it hadn't been for that relationship and that rapport I had with Bruce. Mm-hmm. And so for somebody that I wasn't in his band, I wasn't, a student of his for 4 or 6 years, he had a huge impact on my life. And so I want to say that in this forum, and I want to ask the two of you, as colleagues of his for so many years, what that was like, and the good and the bad, because Bruce was a big personality. So.
Yeah, Bruce was definitely larger than life, to say the least. And I think one of the things that I thought was so good about Bruce is that he was very consistent, and he also took nothing for granted. In other words, the little kid who could hardly hold his violin, he worked that out so that could be fixed. He had somebody going through the string section. The Cumberland Orchestra in those days really was a much more elementary style orchestra than you would consider in the last 5 or 6 years, particularly. And so there were a lot of kids in there who could barely hold the bow in the back of the violin sections. But Bruce was able to do that and pull this whole thing together and do some wonderful concerts.
The other thing about Bruce in rehearsals, I was there a lot with my harpist, and Bruce not only addressed musical things with the kids, he really talked about being a person who could be successful, not only in music, but in life.
Yes, life's lessons.
Yes, and he would just give them out. And he would do the same thing when he saw the kids at lunch and around the campus, and he would just really care and try to make them, stand up and have confidence. And and use your metronome. And why is it the metronome around your neck? I'm looking at you, and I told you I don't ever want to see you without a metronome around your neck.
Yeah, and that sounds familiar. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna just tell another very quick story. He was, unbeknownst to me at the time, Bruce was very good friends, or professional colleagues and friends with my high school band director, who's a guy named Jeff Bianchi. And Jeff is in that same vein of being, sort of a very well-known music educator, especially in the band world, which is where Bruce came from.
Yeah.
So I was running to a Cumberland Orchestra rehearsal, and the night before I had been out. I used to be able to go to Convocation, and there was like a French fry place or something. What was the name of that place, Josh? There was some place where you could go and hang out and play pool and like get sodas and food and stuff.
Bishop's
It was in the basement.
Bishop's Common.
Yeah.
Bishop's Common. Right. You think I would remember this. So that used to have like a little place where we could all go hang out. So I was there the night before Cumberland rehearsal, and I left my stick bag in there. I brought it and I left it in there. So I was late to rehearsal, and I kind of snuck in the back, and I was trying to not make it obvious that I was late. And of course I failed. And Bruce looked at me, and I kind of wasn't taking his lecture about being late seriously. And he took his glasses off. Tiger Bay Pub. Yeah, Tracy, thank you. Somebody just commented, Tiger Bay Pub. That's what it was.
That's right.
Yeah. And Bruce took his glasses off and he said, I know your band director. Your band director's name is Jeff Bianchi. And I heard your band play at Midwest. And they were wonderful. And you were in that band. And he just proceeded to tell me, I mean, he could have told me my blood type. I mean, he knew everything about me. He knew everything about my band director. He said, you played this piece and this piece and this piece. And if I pick up the phone after this rehearsal and I call your teacher and tell him you were late to my orchestra rehearsal, what do you think he's going to say about you? And like every ounce of blood just drained out of me. I was 16 or 15, I don't know how old I was. I think I was 16. And
Perfect.
I think I could count to this day, 30 something years later, or whatever many years later, maybe on one hand the times I've been late to any orchestra rehearsal. Now, people that know me know I'm late to a million other things, but to an orchestra rehearsal, I think maybe I could count on one hand. And it's always been because of traffic or airplanes or something. I mean, it was just that moment. Boy, did I learn what it meant to not underestimate this guy on the box, because he knew everybody.
Well, two quick stories. One inspirational and one funny about Bruce Dinkins. When after my first year at Swaney, I went back a significantly different player, and consequently, like all of my friends in the studio at my university, they were like, okay, well, we're gonna go now. And so there became like a string of players from Jacksonville State University that would start coming to be in the trombone studio at Swanee. And so consequently, the trombone studio had much more collegiate participants than high school for several years. So the rotation would always be that we would end up in Cumberland. I mean, not everybody could stay in the Swanee Symphony. And Bruce really set us straight. There was one particular rehearsal. I think we were doing the Zampa something. We were doing something, and somebody
probably Poet and Peasant, or
yes,
Poet and Peasant, Mark Blog, or
and
he did have his favorites, So
somebody in the section was kind of screwing around, or we weren't totally dialed in, or something. And and I mean, granted, there's like a gajillion other things he could have focused on, but he kind of saw that we weren't 100%, and he stopped and he pointed right at us, and he was like, "If you don't think you've got something to learn in here, you can get out. But I'm telling you, you're wrong." He was like, even if it's just learning how to be excellent all the time, step up. And sure enough, I mean, that was a huge moment, for me, just to say, having a level of professionalism isn't just about, when you don't get to the New York Philharmonic by then becoming serious, right. That kind of thing. And the funny story is, I will never forget this. Cumberland got one rehearsal on stage in Gary, and we're in that rehearsal. And the trumpets keep missing an accidental. It's F sharp, and they keep playing F. And Dinkins is like screaming while he's banging the drumstick, and he's like, trumpets, and I look up and he's flipping them off, like finger raised. And I was like, whoa. And then he's like, it's F sharp, like 1 and 3. And he's like, F sharp. But what he did was he said F sharp, and then he turned it around like that. I was like, Bruce. But he just held it up there for a solid like 5 minutes, and we're just dying back there. So.
You know, does that surprise me? He used to lift his shirt up when he didn't think the orchestra was following him, and shake his belly, say, "Now you'll follow me." He would put the baton up his nose. He would do anything he had to do to get his point across to the students. And some of this might not be appropriate in our current universe, and that's probably okay. But boy, it was hysterical, and I still remember it. So Bruce is missed, and is somebody that I think we all have the impact that he had on not just the band world. I mean, it was huge in the band world, but also in the orchestral world. I mean, string players that came through Cumberland and came through Sewanee, they're now sitting in major orchestras who had their first real experience under his baton in Sewanee. It's just there's hundreds and hundreds of them. So we miss Frank a lot. All right, now we got to talk about this, Marion, and I need you to answer this once and for all. I need to know what the 6 Ps of Sewanee are.
Okay.
The official Martha McCrory approved 6 Ps of Sewanee.
And here they are. We would always look forward to this lecture. It would come on a Sunday night.
Sunday night at camp meeting, what, second week, third week? I don't know.
But Martha always encouraged everyone to be their best self. She would talk about the gentleman being gallant, holding the doors for ladies, things that were so old school and so wonderful. And sure enough, some of those boys would just do exactly. Most of them would. But one of her things was musically, the things that would really help you to the musical world with the 6 Ps of Swanee. And her version was prompt, prepared, practice, polite, perseverance, and professional. Now, the faculty had heard this lecture over and over, and we had a habit of all sitting together on the back row. So we started to make our unofficial faculty list of
themes, yes.
Now, my favorites that we made were parties and pranks.
Okay.
I ended up being the queen of pranks.
Yes. I remember some of this, yeah.
Yes. I just felt like we worked so hard. The students worked so hard. The faculty worked so hard that it was important for us to still remember that it was summer camp. And what's a summer camp without pranks?
Yes.
So I really applied myself to pranking.
You definitely were the queen of pranks.
I was the queen of pranks. We would gather fireflies and let them out at Gary Hall for faculty concerts on Saturday night because it made everything so magical. And then another thing that I thought was fun, there were so many amazing bugs at Sewanee. Enormous bugs.
They're called stag beetles.
And started a bug collection. And the students and faculty, once they heard my love of bugs, would collect them for me. And Bruce Dinkins is in this story, actually. At Gaylor Hall, where we used to eat, where we'd all eat, there was a salad bar.
Oh, no. Yeah, okay.
I have a few of these enormous stag beetles in my purse. And I was at the salad bar with Bruce, and I had somebody call him away for a moment. And while he was gone, I put my best stag beetle in the middle of his salad.
Oh.
And then we went to our table. He was sitting far away. And everything was just fine. And then all of a sudden, Bruce thundered, "Schaefer!"
Because he knew instantly.
Of course.
And I ran for the door, and he ran right after me.
Oh, it's funny. I could see it. Oh, that's great.
He was always a good sport about everything. But our harp department had a lot of fun with birthdays too. Whenever there was a harpist birthday.
Yeah, can you talk about that? And also, could you talk about the rivalry? And we've got some comments here I want to get to as well. But the rivalry between the harp and bassoon studio, which I think that came about a little bit later in the process here. But,
That was later.
yeah.
That Hunter, he would come to the art gallery and put all kinds of tape on my door, and we just decided that so Hunter needed a visit from the harp studio to the bassoon studio, so we would go down there and decorate the bassoon studio. It was back and forth, and I guess we did kind of crash one of the bassoon zooms, didn't we? We dressed up, but the great thing about being where we were was in the old days. Convocation hall, you know that little spiral stair that goes all the way up? That's where they used to keep costumes for the theater. So there was a gorilla suit up there. We did a lot of fun things in the gorilla suit.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well,
and we used, I think, did we use some of those on Hunter? I'm not sure that we did.
I know the Stag Beetles did figure into some of the episodes with Hunter.
Yeah, can I just say that about the bugs? Oh my God.
yeah, go ahead.
So like Cannon Hall, of course, none of the dorms had air conditioning. And so in Cannon Hall, the college men's dorm, they would just leave the window to the bathroom up.
Oh.
And at night, like, I mean, it was petrifying to have, if you had to go to the restroom in the middle of the night and turn that light on, I mean, you would see moths like this, like all different colors. I mean, I'm like, I've never seen species of moth like there are at Sewanee, and they were all in the Cannon Hall bathroom. I mean, like just all over the place. And you turn on that light and those wings would start flapping all over the place. And I mean, it's like you're in a Godzilla movie or something. I don't know, but like, so me and the guys, we had the most popular rooms because at the beginning of the summer, we would go down to Walmart and we would buy a couple of window air conditioned units and put them in the dorm. So that's kind of where a lot of people would come to hang out because it was like a decent temperature.
So I want you all to know, and Jessica, I want to get you in here about the bugs or anything else you want to talk about, peeling your arms off a Gaylor. Because we were talking about that too. The cafeteria didn't have any air conditioning and used to be able to kind of peel yourself off the table. And I remember being, even though I live in Virginia, I live in what folks call occupied Virginia, which is right outside Washington. So the rest of the state calls us occupied Virginia. So I'm not Southern at all. I had no Southern heritage. My family's from Jersey. So I had never been to the South before coming to Swanee. And so in those days, I mean, the food now at Swanee, I have to say, anyone that comes to the festival or goes to the University of the South that complains about the food, just don't even, because there's organic stuff and vegan bars. I mean, it's amazing now. It's fantastic. But then everything was fried, and I had never seen that before. I never had chicken fried steak or fried okra or fried.
You can fry everything, right?
You can fry everything. And so for like the first 2 weeks, I was in heaven as a 16-year-old boy. I was like, this is great, everything fried. And then by like week 3, I couldn't move. I was just paralyzed by the food and all that. But now, Josh, I want you to know you're getting called out here in the group. And I've just discovered that I could put comments on the screen. So Sarah here has shared that she may have helped you do some pranks with somebody. Is that?
Oh yeah. Well, Corey Vries was the RA for Cannon, and eventually I think he was like the number 2 person at Sewanee. But yeah, anything we could do to make his life a little more difficult, it was always enjoyed. So.
Good. And there's another one here. Thank you, Sarah. There's another one here from Courtney. Did any of you have anything to do with possums in the window? Was that a thing that ever happened? Anyone know anything about possums?
God, I would not have come back. I'll tell you that. So
Amazingly, I don't think I did that.
Well, I'm going to share one more thing here. And first, I'm going to say this as someone who does some conducting and who has to deal with conductors on a professional level. I don't want to plant any ideas in anybody's head. But there was also Graham who's mentioning that we would slip things into conductors.
Oh, yeah.
It was definitely known to happen. Yes, absolutely.
I think it actually did happen to Keisler once.
Well,
They were there.
To any potential conductors that are watching now, I will guarantee you that won't happen to you. Please know that that's something that.
Because I'm not on the faculty anymore.
Well, you know that all you got to do is say yes, Marion, and you're you and Frank. All right, now we're going to go on. We were talking about Bruce. We got the 6 Ps. We got the pranks in here. You know, we can go on about so many things, but I just want to give all of us a chance to kind of share a couple because we're at 45 minutes and we didn't even get a chance to talk about Donna Cotter, whose name is coming up here now, and Donna and her family. Yeah, huge parts of Sewanee and their time and Donna did just about everything for that place for so many years. And there's so many others. I'm forgetting who were some of the people that made the place run.
Before we forget, let's say something really quick about Donna and Bob Cotter.
Donna and Bob Cotter were some. I think they were part of the inspiration for what was known as the Swanee Strolling Band.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay.
Which was our first big effort of the music center and festival to really become a part of the 4th of July with the community. They were very instrumental in getting that started. I think Bob was sort of the band director that year, and Donna got the flag corps organized and all that stuff. And they went down to Walmart and bought bolts of cloth, and we did some PVC pipe to get flags and all sorts of stuff. And it was really very successful. But Donna and Bob in general were just pretty much, as you said, did everything at the camp and were very much encouraging of students, making sure the students towed the line when it was necessary. And Marion and I both have just the highest regard for Donna and Bob, and we have seen them a few times since Swanee. And they're just the same old good folks who really care about everybody that they come in contact with, particularly young people.
So, Josh, I think Corey is watching us here. So if you want to apologize for moving.
I'm sorry, Corey.
Please, if you please.
I promise you that, I'm sure that in addition to Sarah, Bruce Mangan had something to do with it, and maybe even Jack Ray. So I'm very sorry. So
Jack Ray, we could do a whole other thing on Jack Ray. He was such a huge
Jack Ray at a cannon party told me one time about how he got into a fight that ended with mutual respect with Henry Rollins. I was amazed by that, actually. So.
We had some great stage managers. We really.
Oh yes, absolutely.
When Bruce and Jenkins were in charge, and Wade Beast, we had great ones, and they were always fun.
Sorry, Corey.
I'm just sharing selected comments as I can. So we talked about a lot of folks that Jack and Donna and Bruce, who's back with us. Bruce Mangan, who's back working with Sewanee, and has been such a huge part of making these last few years for me successful. Leo Segiga, am I saying his name right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Another one.
Leo kept the camp going. He was amazing. The summer he was in charge, we would go by his office. Martha's old office at 2 a.m. and he was still there.
Mm-hmm.
He was handling all.
I understand that now.
Practically single-handedly. He was just amazing.
And we have to say that Corey continued as well.
Yeah.
It may have been more unofficial than official.
And Bruce Heim.
Bruce Heim. Yeah, absolutely.
Were just amazing. And still the greatest sense of humor, all of them. it was just really, really wonderful the way they kept things going.
Can I just share something real quick, John?
Please, yeah.
I know you had talked about, like, you know, some takeaways and a couple of things, not dealing with actually performing, which, let me just say, I mean, the first thing I remember Martha saying at the beginning of my first camp was, it's going to be a time warp, and you're going to come out the other end of this. And you're not going to feel like you're any different until about 1 or 2 months into your next fall. And that's when you're going to see the benefits of what you've been doing. And she was absolutely right. So the performing itself was made the entire experience worth it. But the skills that I learned there that were supplemental to performing, like working with Jack Ray and a real professional handling of staging, taking real pride in setting up the stage and making sure everything was just right, whether it be for the Garth concerts or for the Saturday night chamber concerts or whatever. But then also the public speaking. I mean, and I, you know, talk about, you know, something that would elicit snickers, talking about like having to have an exact, you know, template of what to say and how to say it. But witnessing on more than one occasion, Martha McCrory like stopping and saying, "Get back off stage and come back out here and do it right. And let me hear you." And she would actually stop the chamber concerts to work with them on their public speaking. And at the time, I remember thinking, why is she doing so much time for this? But it absolutely made me feel like today I'm very comfortable talking in front of a large group of people. And I, you know, whether it be sharing some information in a recital or a master class or a big lecture class or whatever. And I certainly credit, you know, the emphasis on good public speaking that I got here at Sewanee. So,
Jessica, tell us about your takeaway from your time as a student and what you see now working. Unfortunately, this was going to be your first summer back with us on the faculty in real life. And of course you are on the faculty, but we're in this weird virtual place now. So I'm loving this discussion, and I don't want to stop necessarily, but we're coming up on an hour, and I know everyone's time is precious. And so anyway, Jessica.
I don't know. I mean, I think for me, you know, it's a fact that I was kind of on both sides. You know, the first time I was there as a student, and then later, you know, on the faculty. I feel like I've kind of been the best of both worlds. The first time when I was there, you know, I said earlier that it was, you know, my very early years of being in this country. I mean, you know, my English was just barely there, and you know, though I did manage to make a lot of friends back then, but still, I mean, there were so many things I feel like I feel bottled inside that I want to talk, I want to express, but my, you know, English ability at that point was quite limited. So I learned Swaney to communicate with, you know, playing with you know, like through the instrument, through communication limited with the faculty, with the teacher, and but mainly it's through music. And I remember, because in China I went to Central Conservatory of Music, and I mean, in those days I think everyone was kind of trained as soloists. So we go to competition, it's chamber music. Part of it was, now it's different, but back then chamber music, part of it was kind of not touched so much. So I didn't have experience to play that much chamber music back then when I was in Beijing. So Swanee really was the first festival that I went to in this country, and the intensity of the chamber, the kind of chamber work that I did over there, I felt like it was something I have never experienced before. So even though I couldn't speak as much, but I felt like through playing, that kind of made up for it. So that was the biggest takeaway for me. Like, the level of what Swanee offers, I think for just the kind of intensity, you really don't get that. I remember thinking, whoa, this kind of level of playing, and we're only going to rehearse this for 3 times, 4 times, and then we're going to perform it. How is that possible? Because in China, I remember before I came to this country, we our youth philharmonic, we went on a European tour, and we had 2 programs, and we rehearsed the entire summer. It was Beethoven Seventh, Haydn Variation. So in my mind, for those kind of major work, you need major time to rehearse. But we're here, the Swaney, that you have a new piece of chamber music, and you get together with people you've never played with, and you have a couple of rehearsals, boom, you're on stage. So that was quite, I mean, it wasn't perfect, but I felt like, it's like you're kind of forced into that situation where you just have to learn it quickly and grasp what's important in that piece, in that experience. So that was something that I felt like Sewanee was very unique in offering because of the quick pace of it. And now fast forward, fast forward all this year later, being on the other side, I as faculty, I feel like I had to teach the kid how to do that. And so based on my own experience and, so to guide them through that, because I see the same doubt in their eyes, like how on earth I'm going to do this? You give me the piece on Tuesday, how on earth am I going to perform this on Friday? I don't know these dudes. And but then, course of 3-4 days, you get them going and somehow, miraculously they do it. And they have fun and they make new friends. And so that, to me, I think it's a big thing that a big takeaway for me.
Absolutely.
The format of it. Yeah.
Well, and I know from both being on the faculty and what I hear now, of course, it's such from colleagues who are on faculty that, and Marion and Frank, I'd love your thoughts on this real quick as we wrap up. Was it Martha that always said that the stage is your best teacher, right? And that real world, real experience playing and performing was what she really designed the whole program to be. And that don't let perfection become the enemy of the good. I mean, there's all these ways to put it, but I mean, I felt much more prepared after those 5 weeks to face whatever came at me, even though I was going back into a high school setting. And it's a much more realistic environment. I mean, all of us are professional musicians. How many times have you had, 5 months to prepare one piece in our world?
Martha really provided what we all know as the professional environment. The Memphis Symphony only has 4 rehearsals maximum for most concerts. So you have to be able to produce it that quickly and just accept it. Likewise with chamber music. You don't always have the luxury of having more than 3 or 4 rehearsals before you put a chamber concert together.
Well, and speaking of that, going out and talking about things that, not only did Martha have a script, but I guess she was pretty particular about what you could say and not say. So.
Yes, he did a comment from Tracy about how Martha did not like it when you said, and on clarinet would be, and Tracy still bugs her. And I remember telling my harpist, now don't say on harp because that means you straddle the harp. But it's just her things. And remember in the old days, we used to have to. If you were the leader of the group, you had to not only say everyone's name but their hometown.
Right, that's right.
15 in the group, you said all 15.
Yeah.
That's correct.
When you think about it, it's really pretty incredible. But
I think what he really was trying to show us is that every aspect of the performance.
It was an amazing lesson. And so this past summer, we're having a little connectivity issue here. It could be me, but when we did the celebration of Martha's life and her gift to the music festival, her family's gift, Paul Bryan, who was our guest there, is a dean at Curtis, and he was one that came up to me at the Sphinx conference almost in tears about his time at Swanee and how much he loved it there and how important Swanee was to him. And, anything I can do, I'll come back and do whatever you need. So I've definitely taken advantage of his request to do whatever we need as the dean at Curtis. But Paul and I were going to speak, and both of us were standing backstage, and we're kind of like making sure that we were standing up straight. And I was thinking the whole time, like, I cannot walk out onto stage to talk about Martha McCrory and be slouched over. Like, there's no way. Like, she'll figure out a way to come down from wherever she is and yell at me.
Yes.
I saw her. I had a vision of her running down the auditorium there if I walked out, with my shoulders around it. So
sure to do it briskly.
Yes,
briskly, that's right. Walk briskly with intention. Steve Katz, Claire, I encourage you to look at it. Or I would say, all right, well, there's another, or we would play like She Would Holler Then Do It. We would like to play She Would Holler Then Do It.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. I remember that, Kara.
So the last quick thing I was going to share, Frank, something I remember, and this is, I'm being a little selfish sharing a story just from my time as just one of your students there, but you drove us over to Huntsville to see Mr. Hinger. Yeah. And for those of you that don't know, Dan Hinger, Fred Hinger was Frank's teacher. He was also the timpanist of the Philadelphia Orchestra, and then subsequently the Met in New York, and a really legendary figure and a colleague of someone who became a teacher of mine, Alan Abel, who we just lost very recently to COVID. So even as a kid, Hinger was like this major figure in my mind. But I didn't really know anything about him. And studying with Frank, I learned a lot about what he'd done in his career. And then to get to go spend some time with him at his family's house in Huntsville was just really special for all of us that got to go. And so thank you for that. Thank you for setting that up. I know that wasn't easy. His health at that time wasn't great. And so for him to take his time to do that, and for you to set that up was really, really cool for us. So thank you.
We were all very fortunate that he was still in pretty good shape then. What happened was Mr. Hinger had Parkinson's disease. And so he was just at the very early stages of it at that point, and had retired to Huntsville. And so what an easy trip for us to go down and see one of the world's greatest artists 2 hours away.
Yeah, it was amazing. So, well, this has been a lot of fun, and we could all keep telling Swanee stories and watching Swanee, so talking about this. And the good news is the response I'm seeing in our social media and this discussion means we just have to do this again. So we'll figure out a time to do it again, and eventually we could actually maybe do it in Swanee, because I think that would really be special to get our alumni together.
Wouldn't that be great?
Every morning, a chilled Swanee mist from Sterling's, and every evening, your favorite beverage down at Shenanigans. So.
We didn't even talk about Shenanigans or Sterling's or the Blue Chair or anything. Oh my gosh, yes, Shenanigans. The floor that remember that?
Oh, absolutely.
What about the Waffle House?
Oh yeah, of course.
The Waffle House. You can't forget about that.
Waffle House.
And the Weekly Picnic.
Yes. And the old school Swanee Inn. Right now, the Swanee Inn is beautiful.
The Swanee Inn is awesome now. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was not back in the day. So
back in the day, we had 2 harp practice rooms at the Swanee Inn.
Really? I didn't know.
These old motel style rooms.
Martha couldn't figure out what to do with 13 harp students. Some harp practice rooms, so she made a deal with the Swanee Inn that we could take over 2 of those rooms and put harp in.
Well, I'm sympathetic with her not knowing what to do with 13 harps. I'm not sure I would know what to do with 13 harps. But she solved the problem, that's for sure. This has been great. Marion, Frank, Jessica, Josh, thanks for being here. Thanks to all of our alumni and friends that watched and commented, and this will be shared in those groups, and we'll share it with some other folks, and definitely plan to do this again and to connect with our alums. And we wouldn't be the festival we are without all of the folks that have come through to study and trusted this place with their music education. So we're incredibly grateful to everyone that's come through the festival. Mary and Frank, our friendship is so meaningful to me. I could take another hour to tell you how much it means to me. So I'm just so grateful for you to.
We feel the same way with all of you. Really, I mean, as you say, the Swanee is a giant family.
Yeah,
that's how I feel. Yeah.
What is it? The Swanee spirit, right? Is that what they say?
The
Swanee Angel. The angel. You got
The Sewanee angel. Yeah, that's it.
We still have a Swanee angel sitting over our door at our house.
Well, we'll make a deal. We'll do this same thing again, but we'll do it in Sewanee. Even if we have to be distant, we'll wear our masks. We'll do whatever we need to do, but we'll do it in Sewanee, and we'll do the mist, and we'll do the crooked floor shenanigans, and the whole thing.
That's wonderful.
We've enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
We can get to your pictures, but thanks everybody. Take care.
Take care.
Bye. See ya. Bye.